Hey everyone, it's Orly and Jessie, and we just are doing a little video. I know she's not going to hold still long, but I wanted to bring her here. Oops, there she goes, just as I suspected. And anyways, we are out near the Mount Vernon area of the state of Virginia and Washington, D.C. And this month's video, I wanted to, well, get this great scenery that's out here. But really, it comes down to, I wanted to talk about the topic of, how we take things for granted. And this is a really huge thing because so much of the time, we have things going on and we just go through day-to-day life and we don't even realize how many amazing things that we have that we don't even think about throughout the day. And it's not bad that we don't think about every little thing, but it is important to stop and take a little bit of time to be conscious of all these little aspects that we just totally don't think about. Now, for example, Orly is the last couple of days been dealing with a little bit of sinus issues going on. Of course, there's a lot of pollens here in the Virginia area, in the DC area, and that's made her nose a little stuffed up. And, kind of got me to thinking, how many of us just figure that we've got plenty of time around, that we have really, not just time and aspects, but we've got the piece of we never stop and think about our smell. We never stop and think about what it would be like to be without that sense. And I think when we think about having to do without, oftentimes we do think, okay, what is it to not have a sense? Sometimes people will lose an arm, especially being back here where there's so many military bases, and we think about all the people that have gone to war and things like that, and they've lost limbs and they've lost different senses along the way. But it's so much more than that when we think about taking things for granted and we think about all these everyday little aspects we have from the people in our lives. I know that being on the road, for example, is, for the last 2 months, you take all the small things for granted, like just being able to get up and start work, or having a couch to sit on at night, or having, a shower ready to go, as opposed to stopping and searching and finding some of those things. And it's an amazing process, some of these small details that you just don't even think about until you're doing without them. And one thing I've learned about this facet of life is that if we make a conscious effort to acknowledge these little things every day, and you don't have to acknowledge the same thing over and over again, but to take the time to be conscious about them and to be conscious of how much we have, not only do we operate in a vibration of abundance, but we also run a greater chance that we will keep those things functioning in high levels. So, for example, if I'm appreciating my sense of smell, if I'm appreciating what's being offered to me on a day-to-day basis, then I'm really much more likely to, take advantage of those things. I'm much more likely to stay in my health, which I've been doing all throughout this trip, which has been wonderful and exciting. But it keeps them operating, because what you appreciate is where your attention is going. And of course, where your attention is going is what is going to happen. So if you're focusing on, wow, what great health I have, for example, then you're going to continue to have great health. There's so many pieces to that. I could probably do a whole show on that, couldn't I? And then there's another piece here, which I wanted to bring in, and part of why I'm filming out in this area, and that is because being near Mount Vernon, I'm near some family roots. So, for example, I'm a 5th generation niece of George Washington, and this is another thing that we take for granted. We take for granted people and heritage, and we automatically assume and we automatically clump people into their heritage. So I might have these connections, but does that really make me like George Washington, for example? Does that really make me, just because I have that lineage, the same type of person he was? And I have to say no. I'm my own person. I'm a different person. But we automatically assume that, hey, since your ancestor did this to me, you're that way too. And we've seen this come up in a lot of different groups and a lot of different societies, which saddens me because, when I think about these things, we're not here to be separating off. We're We're here to figure out how to unite. We're here to figure out how to connect our pieces together. And maybe I don't connect with everybody, but I connect with a few people who connect with more people who connect with more people. So we oftentimes assume that just because, for example, somebody's brother is rich or uncle is rich or has these certain things, that other people in the family are that way too. So that's another form of taking things for granted. And I want you to stop and really take that time to think about how often do you make those assumptions where you're taking people or things for granted, where you're taking your senses for granted, and take the time to stop and think about what would it be like to be without these things. Because, when we think of something, for example, with Orly, as simple as smell, smell affects so many things. It affects our ability for defenses. With her, it affects whether she eats or doesn't eat. If she can't smell something, she's not going to eat it. So there's a lot of pieces with smell, and that's going to in turn affect our digestive. It's going to in turn affect other things like hearing and different things. And other senses don't automatically just improve because you lose one sense. So take the time to be conscious today of how much you really have. How much have you been taking for granted lately? And actually, I'm going to delve a lot more into this subject and a lot more into how important the small things are in life coming up later this month on my radio show, Activating Compassion Radio. And you can definitely catch it. Follow up. You can catch the link on my website, Jessie and Nichols George. the1.com. This is Orly and I coming to you from the Mount Vernon area in Virginia. Take care until next month.